It's time for another edition of Prose with Vicky Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Cindy.
Sparkly as usual. I have a Pinot Grigio, and since it's summer, just going light. What about you?
Not really summer yet, but I'm in my bubbles and bling. No bubbles today. I'm actually drinking a Frank Family Chardonnay. Normally I drink the Cab, but the Chardonnay is pretty nice, pretty tasty.
Lovely.
We call the show Prose because we love prose and we're PR professionals, prose. And prose rhymes with rose, and the show's during happy hour Eastern Standard Time, and we talk to fabulous authors. So there you go. And today's guest is Jeffery Deaver. He is an award-winning, international #1 best-selling author who has sold over 50 million books in 150 countries, translated into, I think, over 25 languages. And I'm sure everyone has seen the movie and read the book, The Bone Collector, which starred Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie. Cindy and I have been talking about that. His latest in the Lincoln Rhyme series is called The Midnight Lock. Gotta love that with my name. He's a journalist, obviously a crime writer, an attorney. He loves dogs, shows dogs, and he even has a connection to Kanye West. We're going to find out all about that. We welcome Jeffery Deaver to Prose.
Well, thank you, Cindy and Vicky. And, I'm a writer now, and I love wine. I actually collect wine. But I'm an author, so I'm having bourbon. Is that all right?
That's fine. What kind of wines do you collect?
Oh, and I like everything. I mean, I guess my favorites are white Burgundies from Burgundy, Chardonnay grape primarily. Chablis, probably my favorite white. My favorite red, I like Cabs. Blaufränkisch is an Austrian red that's very nice. It's very light. Some of the, frankly, the French Bordeaux can be a little heavy, but I like the, on the other side of the river down there, the Saint-Emilion grape. That's like Chateau Petrus and, the Pinot Noir grape, basically. So that's, I could go on and on about wine, but anyway, we could just, take up the entire time talking about that.
Well, and I would love that because I love wine, but yes, we digress. Let's talk about the book, about the Midnight Lock. Love it. Lock. So I understand that you were inspired because you were locked out of your house or something, and that's how the book came to be. Is that true?
Exactly. I am always looking for ways to scare the socks off my readers. And I walk around and observe things. And I'll give you an example. I wrote a book called The Burning Wire a few years ago when in the same house, an electrician had to replace a circuit breaker. And he came in and, was just pulled the panel off. And I'm sure you've all seen these things. It's a little switch that pops if there's too much electricity there. And I said, well, the main switch is outside. Don't you want to pull that to be safe? He said, no, I know what I'm doing. But if I were to touch this and that, a metal vent that went down into the ground, he said, I'd die just like that. And I said, isn't that great news? Because there was my idea for the book. Now, The Midnight Lock, I was locked out of the house. And so I called on my mobile phone, I called a locksmith. And they came right away. They have emergency service. And then after verifying that I was, in fact, the owner of the house, because that has been tried before, I've been locked out of this house, and then you walk out with a big screen TV. But I showed ID, and he, within probably 20 seconds, he took out these tools and just opened it up just like that. And I thought, well, there's the idea for my next book. And I'll just talk about it very briefly. The villain in this book, and his identity is known until later in the book, but he has an obsession, I don't know, it's hard to say, almost an addiction to breaking into a lock. Now, once he gets inside, I don't want to give too much away, right. But he's not a rapist, he's not a serial killer. It's the lock that's most important to him. And he gets into people's apartments after midnight. And then what's the most horrendous thing he does? He sits beside their bed, watches them sleep, and has a ham sandwich, and often a glass of wine, by the way. And then, but of course, there's much more to the book than that. Lincoln and Amelia are asked to get onto this case because he leaves a calling card that may have something to do with a big media empire, sort of a la Succession, if you've seen that, a great TV show. And then we're off to the races. It's typical of my books, takes place over about 2 days, lots of internal reversals. A chapter ends on cliffhangers. And then we race through to the end. There's a big surprise ending. And then after that, there's a big surprise ending. Following that, there's a big surprise ending because I like surprise endings. And it was great fun to write. It's a roller coaster. This is not literature. This is to, get you to miss your train stops and not refuse to get off airplanes when they land because you want to finish the book.
When was the first time you can remember being scared to death, and did you like it?
Scared to death. Well, I guess I'm a coward. There's no question about it. I like to ski, and I guess I've been. I can't really ski much anymore, but I used to ski, not really extreme, but I was skiing at one point and just I didn't know the run, and it was on a run. I wasn't in the back bowls or anything like that, but it was. I just looked to my side like 2 feet away, and there was a drop of easily 100 feet, and there was no guardrail or anything like that. Now, if I were skiing on, let's call it was probably a 4-foot wide path. If I'm skiing on that and the ground was level for 100 yards on either side, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. I was still skiing straight, no problem there. But just because there was a fall off there, I was utterly terrified. Now that's a real life terror. If you want to talk about artistic terror, I think it was probably at 24 years old, I saw The Exorcist, William Friedkin's movie, a book written by Blatty. I forget his full name, but anyway, it was a great book and a great movie. And believe me, I'm not of a religious bent myself, but I was ready after seeing that to call the Pope personally and say, "Will you have me, please? What can I do to sign up with you guys, just in case I need your services?" It was I don't think I've been that scared in a film, before or after. I mean, Psycho was good. I like that. And I have to say, I've had some movies made of my books. There's something about cinema, and I include television in that creates more opportunities for fear because there are multiple senses involved. You can have a slam cut, you can have the music crescendo very loudly, and we jump at that. You can see a stupid cheerleader walking toward the house where she knows the killer is, and we're saying, no, don't go there. Well, we don't care. She's an actress. She's not really going to be killed, but we kind of get very emotionally engaged. A book has the opportunities to engage people emotionally. I mean, that's my whole job in life. That's what I gear all my books to. But we don't really have the advantage of those, somewhat more immediate sensory activities that can scare the hell out of people slightly better than a book can.
Well, I bet you get a lot of thriller writers together in a convention. It gets a little crazy, doesn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of work done. And then after we leave the bar, we go to the conference itself. And I'm not being completely facetious there because we are people who sit in a dark room and write for hours on end. Before we went on, I showed you my dog, and she and her brother sit at my feet, and I'm there for 10 hours. There are certainly rest stops and maybe get a bite to eat or something, but that's what I do. And I'm introverted, but still need to get out and go in this profession. And it is a profession, a lot of art. People like Mozart and Beethoven and Rembrandt, Da Vinci. They were people who worked on commission under contract to deliver a product. we're the same. We're the same way, and you can put it under the rubric of art if you want. But we have to be business people, businessmen and businesswomen, and going to the conferences gives us an opportunity to reconnect and see what's going on. Who is writing this kind of book? Is the new thing, the new genre, going to be Harry Potter meets Walking Dead? Maybe that will be the big thing coming up. So I love the conferences. I'm actually going to be teaching a course at a conference called Thriller Fest this summer. It's in New York City. It's a conference I go to every year. There'll be hundreds of authors there, thousands of fans or so. And that's another thing about conferences. I love to meet my fans. Sadly, COVID has, the last 2 years, that's limited the opportunity to do that. I think we're kind of coming to an end now, and I'm starting to do more live events. But that's important to do. Get out there, meet people, and learn things. I mean, I've been doing this for 50 years now, and I'll give you a fast example. I was teaching a seminar, teaching my course at I think it was Virginia, maybe Virginia State University. I forget exactly where it was, and I would sit in on some other sessions. First-time writer talking about an experience he had, and his editor had said, Joe, I can't remember his name, but Joe, it's a good book, but I've noticed you use the word "well" a lot in dialogue, and your characters will frequently start by saying, "Well, this or that." I thought, I went back to my room, had my manuscript there, and you know how you can search for a word? I searched. I had like 400 times I'd mentioned the word "well," and this is a first-time writer. He taught me something at a conference.
Did you read the book, The Plot? And if so, have you ever read a part of their book and thought, this is the next great novel?
No, I have not read the plot, although I'm intrigued by your mentioning that. No, in my work as an educator is solely lecture. I do not read students' work. I frankly don't feel that's valuable unless you're doing a deep dive, a retreat of some kind. And even then, I'm a little skeptical of it. You have to learn the tools. Tools are grammar, punctuation, syntax. You have to learn the way stories should be structured, and stories do need a structure. Absolutely need a structure. But I learned that I learned the nuts and bolts by going to journalism school, but you don't need to do that. You can buy a book like The Elements of Style or take an English course, and just in learning the, what I call the tools of the trade. But once that's done, I just pull apart books, and not literally, I should tell you that. I outline them, and I've done this all my life. I'll take an author I admire and a pad of paper. Chapter 1, little brief thing. What happens here? Chapter 2, what happens here? Chapter 3, what happens here? And in fact, when I published about 5-6 books, went to a bigger company, and then they wanted to reprint those 5 or 6 books, and I wouldn't let them do it until I had rewritten them. Why? Because I had outlined, after they were done, I outlined the books just as I described and saw everything I had done wrong, and so I restructured them. And, I think they were much better books when they were reprinted. But I tell my students, do the same thing. Find an author you admire, whether it's in crime, fantasy, dystopian literature, and outline the book, see what the authors have done right. And by doing it right, it simply means that you are emotionally engaged in the story. So therefore, they're doing something right. And then emulate that. Just don't copy their prose, because that can get you into trouble if you're not careful.
Yeah, definitely don't copy their prose or our prose either.
Can we talk about The Bone Collector? And did you get to have a say-so in the casting for the movie?
All right. You're looking at a man who turned down a chance to have dinner with Angelina Jolie. And as your viewers can see, I have a bad thing, but I'm being a little silly here. What I mean by that is that I love writing books, and the book is my end product is 95% mine. Editors have an input, of course, as they should, but 95% mine. If it's a success, I can take credit for that. If it's a failure, then that's on my shoulders. But it's not so much the ego; it's just about the control. And I rewrite hundreds of times. Well, to be realistic, 50 times. Every book of mine's rewritten 50 times, and I control that. I can move things around even at the last minute. When you're doing a creative product by committee, like a movie, you don't have that luxury. You are beholden to the other very talented people, but the end product is not yours. And again, that's not ego. It's just that I have a vision of what I want the story to be. And I will say with the Bone Collector, they did send me both the series, the showrunners. I talked to them about it. They wanted my input, and the scriptwriter sent me a copy of the Bone Collector script before they started shooting, and I gave them some comments. But that's not my thing. And in fact, it's a very scripts are a very different language. I've written some just kind of on a lark, and I don't really have the sense for it. I've written. I actually did an audio play that starred Alfred Molina, the great actor. And I could do that because it was all words. And then I had some sound effects too. I would not be able to introduce the visual, the visual elements to a script. As much as I love movies and have been influenced by them, nonetheless, that's a skill I just don't have. Now, I should say that my book, The Never Game, starring a new character of mine, Coulter Shaw, has been picked up by Disney. And the fellow directing that is a guy named Ken Olin, who is doing right now This Is Us, and he did 30-something. And Justin Hartley is going to be starring as my hero. This is on CBS. He's going to put it on CBS, and that's coming out next year. And I look forward to having some conversations with them. I already have had a few conversations, but then I go back to my dark room again, where I'm happiest.
Now, we talked to author Ellen Hilderbrand about her book, Golden Girl, and she has a section where the character spends some time in Cleveland, which is where I grew up. And she was saying, so I said, I thought it was spot on. So she tells us that there was, I think, a Facebook group that was dedicated to everything Cleveland, that actually scrutinized everything she wrote. And she joined the group, and they told her, well, you got just a few things wrong. So I'm wondering, Lincoln Rhyme is a quadriplegic, and are there groups now that ask you how you got it right, or tell you that you got anything wrong? Are they contacting you?
Well, I've been actually involved over the years with disability rights organizations, and I make sure that I get everything right. I try really hard to get everything right. We hear now this cultural appropriation issues and so forth, and I have I don't. That's such a large rubric. I don't think it's really helpful to use a phrase like that. I think what's helpful is to make sure that an author who is stepping outside his or her own persona just does the research. If I didn't, I'd be writing every book about a 71-year-old bald man. What's the fun of that? And so I've written about Black characters, men and women, about Asian Americans, about historical characters. Adolf Hitler was a character in one of my books. I've written about Latinx people. I've written about trans people and gay. And I just think that you just have to do the work, and that applies to geography too. Now, of course, you're going to get some things wrong. My niece told me the other day that a 15-year-old, soon to be 16-year-old niece, told me that the kids don't really say dope enough. They say cool, which is from my vocabulary back in actually pre me, the beat era, the 1950s 50s, although I was here then, but I was not like a cool cat back in the 50s. I was a geeky nerd kid. But so she said, at one point they did say dope, but now it's moved on, which is any writers or potential writers out there should be careful about that. If you put too much vernacular or slang in your books, it's probably going to be outmoded. So try to avoid that as much as possible.
It's funny you say that because there's basically 4 levels of the word suspicious that my daughter educated me on. There's the word suspicious, then there's my generation that says suspish, and then hers is sus, and then her 5-year-old sister goes, that's suspicious.
Okay, I'm writing this down now, and if it appears in a book, you didn't copyright any of that, right?
No.
Just
send me a signed copy, and I will be totally happy.
But isn't language fascinating? I just love it, and getting to wrestle with words and where does this right word come from? It's perfect. It's the word that just fits in this sentence absolutely symmetrically. I love it. And then the next paragraph, oh hell, I need that word again, but I can't use it because it's up in the paragraph above. And you go to your synonyms, and it's the thesaurus is kind of connected to the word processing program, and it comes up with kind of useless stuff. And so, but then you wrestle with it and you recast the sentence, and it's a puzzle. And I don't do Rubik's Cube, and I don't play Candy Crush. I do this, or Candy Crunch, whatever it's called. I do this instead. This is my puzzle. This is my jigsaw puzzle.
Absolutely.
Have you seen the movie? There's a movie out now. I think it's on Prime Video. I think it's called The Book of Love or something like that. Anyway, it's about a British author who's pretty bad, but his agent calls and says, your book is #1 in Mexico. And his translator actually made it into kind of like a 50 Shades of Grey. So he's huge over there. So I'm just wondering, since your books have been translated into so many languages, how do you know that they've kept on point?
Exactly. And the answer is I don't. Because I'll say this, it is kind of interesting. I mean, they've been published in, I think, about 25 languages or so. And in Japan, for some reason, the books are published in volumes. Now, my books are not that long, about 400 pages or so in English. And I gave a copy of my book. One of my employees was Japanese, and I gave her a copy of the book. And the only reason I knew it was my book is that it had my name on the cover. I had no idea what the characters were. Didn't know which book it was. So I gave it to her, and she said, "Oh, it's very good, Jeff. I like it a lot." Now, but where's the other half? Because they publish in Japan, they publish in small paperbacks, one volume, the second volume. The books in Italian are about a quarter longer. They have that many more pages because the language is such that a sentence with 7 words in English will be 12 words in Italian. The opposite is true in Germany because the Germans have maybe one word that represents 3 or 4, like Schadenfreude, happiness at the happiness or joy at the unhappiness of others. That one word is that shrinks down. I know I've had a few things published in Turkey and in Iran, and I know very well they take out things in my books. I mean, there would be no hint of, in primarily Islamic dominated countries, they're not going to have any bad words. There certainly will be no sex, no romantic relations. Not that there's much of that anyway. But I will say that the art of translating is truly that. I don't know how these folks do it and do it quickly. And some of my books contain poetry. I used to be a poet a long time ago. I guess once a poet, you're always a poet. I like poetry quite a bit. And in fact, I'll digress. I write for Amazon. I do Amazon original stories, and those are available through your Kindle or Amazon.com. And I just wrote a story I'm in love with about a serial bad guy. I'm hesitating because I don't want to give too much away, but it's a serial villain who leaves where he's going to strike. And I had great fun writing those. And then we think it's going to be translated into Japanese. How on earth are they going to do the poems? Because the rhyme is important, the meter is important. But you know what? There'll be a translator over there that will figure it out.
Well, that's fascinating. I hadn't considered that.
And before we let you go, tell us about your connection to Kanye West.
Okay. Well, I was a failed folk singer a long time ago.
You've done everything.
I've tried everything. That's right. And, someday I'm going to figure out what I can do. So I'm going to keep at it until the end. Anyway, I was not a good musician at all. And I don't have a singing voice, but I could quite easily write songs. And I wrote many songs. Well, they're poems, basically. And I just had a sense of, putting together words and that rhymed and with meter and, some emotion, because that's what this business is all about. And I don't mean, exclusively writing novels. I mean, writing short stories, writing songs, combining them with music. It's about emotional engagement, like get the readers or the listeners, get their palms sweating, get their tear ducts going. That's what this is all about. Well, and I would like to have been a successful musician. I would always have gone into writing novels, but I wish I had been a singer-songwriter. Well, that wasn't going to work out. But then a few years ago, I was thinking, well, I do like to write songs. How about this idea for a book? There's a young singer-songwriter, a la Taylor Swift, kind of a country crossover, country pop crossover. And although she's not country, I understand that, but it's that kind of popular world. And but she's got a stalker. And I mean, I've had stalkers. Anybody in the business has had stalkers, and they can be very frightening. And I thought, well, you know what I'll do? I will write lyrics and seed them through the book, and the lyrics will be the songs that the stalker has studied in order to get into her life, because she writes autobiographical songs. And so I wrote the songs, and then I thought, you know what? I've got the songs. Why don't we produce them? So I went to Nashville, hired a producer and musicians, and they wrote the music. And we've got a CD out. And in fact, if anybody's interested, you can go to YouTube and type in my name, Deaver, and your shadow, and the letters XO. The title of the book was XO. It's in Hugs and Kisses, because that's the way she signed the fan letter, the letter to him that got him to think that she really loves me. All right, long setup. So the album comes out. We did it to promote the book. We gave it away mostly, but it was out there. You could listen to it on Spotify or Pandora, or buy the album if you wanted. But what happens? One of the songs I wrote is nominated for a Hollywood Music Award, and it was kind of a rocker song about the young woman, Kaylee Town was her name, reflecting on growing up and all the music and the happiness around her house in the Nashville area. Well, that was nominated for that. There were 4 other people nominated. I can't remember the other 3, except Kanye West was one of them. And so I was thinking, we know the incident about Taylor Swift where he got up at the music and took the award with him. And I'm thinking, okay, let him try that. If I go up for that award, let him just try. And then I saw a picture of him, and it was, I don't know what magazine it was, but he had, it was, had a shirt off, and that man is cut and buff. And so he wants the award. It's here, Kanye, take it, please. So that's my Kanye West story. And if he's listening to this, all respect, man, don't worry. If you want my award, you can have it. I didn't win. I don't remember who won, but it was neither of us.
Oh, wow. How awesome to be nominated. I mean, that's kind of a cliche, but wow, to go from
completely out of left field. You never know the direction life is going to take.
Definitely.
Well, the book is The Midnight Lock by Jeffery Deaver. We thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you?
JeffreyDeaver.com, and the whole Facebook, put that little funny thing in front of my name, and that's, I guess, the hashtag gets you one where, and the little ampersand thing gets you some, or not ampersand, the little @ thing gets you someplace else, and Facebook stuff for me. I I'm literate when it comes to computer literate when it comes to writing. This whole thing called the internet, I think it's going to take off someday, but it's not for me.
It's probably smart.
Well, thanks again for being on Prose. We wish you all the best.
Okay, cheers all.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Join us next week for another edition of Prose with Vicky Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.